Thank you very much for being here this evening. We're very, very happy to having Dr. Aguillard with us this evening. He's got a lot of good information, and hopefully that you'll come away with this understanding a little bit about our educational system here in Lafayette, Louisiana. We certainly have to have you here, Doctor.
Good evening. So the Lafayette Parish School System educates about 31,000 students, and I arrived in exactly on May 18th, 2015. I was fortunate enough to be relieved from my duties in St. Mary Parish. Today represents my 55th day on the job, and I think we've been incredibly busy in this last 2.5 months because we really are trying to get things energized in the Lafayette Parish School System. Let me tell you why I think that's important. I sensed from conversations and questions from board members and from knowing the community. I lived 9 years in Franklin, Louisiana, having moved to St. Mary Parish when I took the position in St. Mary, but I moved back to Lafayette some 3 years ago in anticipation that I would be finishing up my last contract in St. Mary and then choosing to retire with what would have been 12 years of service in St. Mary. I never really expected that the interim superintendent, Mr. Burnell Lejeune, would choose not to continue in the position he was in as the interim or acting superintendent. Burnell was doing an outstanding job bringing stability back to the office of the superintendent. He made the decision not to continue, choosing to retire June 30th. That opened up another opportunity for me to come back into the Lafayette Parish School System. So I come to you today knowing incredibly well the Lafayette Parish School System, the culture of this community, and the potential of the Lafayette Parish schools to really be an exemplary school district. So let me start by talking to you a little bit about my vision for taking the Lafayette Parish School System and moving it from a good school district, as defined by Jim Collins in Good to Great, to a great school system. And moving from good to great in the case of Lafayette Parish would be moving from its B school district label, which arguably is good, and moving it toward becoming an A-rated school system, which would be a great accomplishment for this community. And I say that because using the last letter grades that were published, which was 2014 for school districts, there are only 9 A-rated school districts in Louisiana. There are 30 school districts that have the B label for accomplishments, and then another 30 school districts that are rated either C or D in accountability. You see, I think the Lafayette Parish School System has the capacity and has the resources to move from its B label toward becoming an A-rated school system. And to do that, I challenged principals in early June to think about academically growing about 3 accountability points each year over the next 3 school years, moving Lafayette as a district from a 90 district performance score, which is a B, and growing about 10 accountability points, which would move this district to 100, which would be symbolically an A-rated school system. You see, I think we have the capacity to do that. And for whatever reason, we need to really push hard over the next 3 or 4 years and really increase the number of children in our schools who score proficiency, who score basic or above on accountability tests. We also need to do something about the graduation rate for students in Lafayette Parish, because arguably, as a community, we should be displeased with the notion that today, using 2014 data, we're graduating only about 69% of the cohort that graduated in 2014. You see, the grad rate is an indication of the capacity of students to finish on time and to graduate with college and career readiness. So I want you to know the staff's been working aggressively, because the problem seems to stem from kids can get to the 9th grade, but they're having trouble getting out of the 9th grade on time, on track to graduate with their cohort. And a cohort is a group of students who enter for the first time in the 9th grade and who graduate exactly 4 years later. So we're working really hard to address the deficiencies that some of our high school students possess in terms of not completing high school as planned, as expected by their parents and the community and whatnot. So I really think that the staff's been energized with the idea that we're going to use data to really drive instruction, and we're going to use regular stopping points in an academic year, and we're going to use various tools available that assess whether or not a student is on track for completion or understanding of concepts. So we're going to be working with a very, very tight framework, asking principals, assistant principals. Each school has an instructional strategist, professional on staff. 17 of the schools in the district further have a data analyst position. We've asked all of these professionals to really collaborate tightly together to stop periodically and assess instruction and assess learning. And we've asked all of those individuals to physically be in classrooms 40% of the day, or just as appropriately, 40% of the week, in classrooms, discussing with teachers issues or concerns or strategies for improving effectiveness. So we really want to take these adults, these professionals, these instructional leaders, and put them where teachers can get the benefit of their professional judgment, and really have good, productive, collaborative discussions between classroom teachers and principals, assistant principals, instructional strategists, data analysts, a very tight learning environment addressing students specifically to address their needs. So I really think we can become an A school district. I really think it's going to be because we're asking professionals to engage in being cognizant of ways to help classroom teachers be more effective. This isn't a gotcha kind of situation. This isn't a dog and pony show process. This isn't a form that you check the boxes for completeness. It's about adults collaboratively discussing with teachers ways to improve teacher practice. And when we do that and we keep students in the focus, we're going to be making good instructional decisions that help more and more students to be successful. So I want to switch to part 2 of my remarks tonight. I want to talk to you about facilities and the needs of the district. So I come to you tonight having great respect for your professional organization here. I've been told that you guys absolutely care about public education and that you want solutions that are reasonable. So I'm here to ask you to help me personally and professionally help board members, help the district find a way to address facility needs. So let me paint the picture for you. So our schools, our middle schools and high schools today, aside from what was the new N.P. Moss Middle School and is now the David Thibodeau STEM High School, none of our middle schools or high schools have air-conditioned gyms. None of them do. So I want you to think about this. When was the last time you went into a business, a shop, a church, a hospital, a grocery store that did not have air conditioning? Well, see, we still have those places in the middle schools and high schools. We sent out a heat index advisory. We've been doing this for the past 3 weeks this summer because the heat index was approaching anywhere from 107 to 112 degrees because of the blazing temperatures approaching 97, 98, 99 actual temperatures. We issued heat index advisories telling our coaches, our cheerleader sponsors, our volleyball coaches, our band programs, do not practice anywhere from 11 in the morning until 7 in the evening. Now we've since relaxed the afternoon time to 4 p.m. But for about a 5-hour window, we're not liking kids to be outdoors exercising because we do not have air-conditioned gyms in the district. Think about that. When was the last time you went anywhere and you thought at all about whether there was air conditioning?
You're talking to a generation of people. We did not have air conditioning.
That's okay. Listen, I grew up on a farm in Lafayette Parish. It was so hot, at midday we had to take a nap. That was a standing rule. And we had a box fan in the window, and I remember my back being soaking wet from lying down on that sheet. I know that we grew up, listen, Mom and Dad had several window units, but for whatever reason, Dad never wanted to run the air conditioners. I understand that. I'm just asking you to think, you know, can you think of another parish anywhere in the region that doesn't have air-conditioned gyms? Let me tell you some other facts while you think about that. The district has 471 temporary buildings. They're sometimes called butler buildings. There's sometimes, a couple of them at Acadiana High School are called gray ghost buildings. They're World War II era temporary buildings. I started working at Acadiana High School in 1975. I remember 4 temporary buildings on the campus. They are still on the campus 40 years later. So I'm going to ask you to think about this. Where in the definition of temporary Do you have something that's 40-plus years in service? Yes, thank you. This is going to be a good group. So let me just tell you the staggering numbers. We have 20% of our students who are educated daily in temporary buildings. Remember, we have 471 of those buildings. When it rains, and it rains often in Louisiana, when it rains, kids can't hear the teacher teaching because of the rain hitting the metal roof. When it's cold, kids have to walk, sometimes under covered walkways, sometimes with concrete paths available, sometimes with shell pathways to get from the main building to a temporary classroom. When it's hot or cold, you really can't hear the teacher again because the combination air conditioner heating unit is on, just making noise, trying to regulate the temperature in that classroom. Those buildings, some of them are so old, they're drafty. They sometimes leak. And they really are, they're in place, and they have become permanent fixtures on some of our campuses. If you go to Milton Elementary School, Milton was built for about 500 students. Today it has 900 students. There are more temporary buildings behind the main building than there are permanent classrooms in the main building. Go to Austin Elementary School. That school was built for about half the students it has today. The main part of the campus was never built to accommodate the number of students now attending Austin Elementary School. Because of that, the cafeteria is so small, we start feeding kids at 10 in the morning, and we sometimes finish feeding lunch to students at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Many schools just do not have the capacity to accommodate the students that are now on those campuses. Coupled with that, we've got countless schools that need additional wings built on their campuses to reduce the number of temporary buildings on those campuses. We also have staggering shifts and growth in student population that have to be addressed. If you spend or have traveled anywhere in the South Lafayette corridor between Broussard and Youngsville, that is the fastest growing corridor for new development and new subdivisions being planned in South Lafayette. That's why the board just recently authorized the Phase 1 construction of what will be the newest high school in Lafayette Parish. The last time this community built a high school was the opening of Acadiana High School in 1969. And Karen Crow, just 71. So those were the last two new high schools in Lafayette Parish, 1969 and 1971. So that's why we're building that South Lafayette High School. We're building it because Como High School has no additional capacity. Como High School, like all of the other schools, has just got way too many temporary buildings. To keep adding temporary buildings to the back of campuses without some kind of master plan to address this. Lafayette High School, another example of a school that is now 60-plus years old. In fact, I was asked to poll, is there anybody here younger than 75? Younger than 1975. I'm sorry. Younger than 75 years of age. Raise your hand if you're younger than 75 years of age. Well, if we all lived, those of you with your hands up, if you lived in the Lafayette school zone, you would have been a graduate of Lafayette High School. Think about that. That school has been in place for 60-plus years. It was never built to accommodate 2,500 students. Never. It needs 2 more temporary buildings to start the school year. We're moving 2 unused, old, temporary buildings from another campus. We're moving them to Lafayette High School and placing them on the seldom used tennis courts. There's no other place for temporary buildings at Lafayette High School. So you probably know or have heard that the board has or will engage an architect to do a feasibility study for Lafayette High School. I'm going to tell you that my gut tells me that the feasibility study is going to call for a brand new Lafayette High School. And based on the 2010 study of facilities in the district, the recommendation will be that we build the new Lafayette High School right behind the current Lafayette High School. And then we'll shift things around once that school opens, and we'll rebuild the stadium and or the student parking lot and whatnot. But just as a point of reference, a brand new Lafayette High School would be estimated to cost about $120 million. Now, we're using that based on a $250 a square foot estimated cost for construction. We think the South Lafayette High School will also run, ultimately, when everything is built out, also about $120 million. So we have some glaring facility needs in the district. And I really don't have a crystal ball, and I really can't predict what the community will support. I don't even know if the community will support any proposition to address the facility needs. But I'm going to share with you my personal thoughts that if we want to become an A-rated school system, then I'm going to ask you the question, should an A-rated school system, blowing and going in terms of student effectiveness, graduating larger numbers of students, college and career ready, should an A-rated school system still have unmet needs of 471 temporary buildings, unair-conditioned gymnasiums, 20% of our students educated in buildings that are drafty, too hot, too cold, too noisy. See, I don't know that an A-rated community can be proud of the fact that those conditions still remain in Lafayette Parish. So I think ultimately it's going to take the adults, and it's going to take people like you and me to really come together and dialogue about what is it going to take to address the facility needs in the district. When will we be ready to talk about the facility needs in the district? If it's not our priority, then whose priority is it to address the facility needs? See, I think it's the adults of Lafayette Parish. And I think we have to come to grips with the fact that we own, the adults in this room, the taxpayers in Lafayette, you own those facilities. They're yours. Your children, your grandchildren are going to be educated in your facilities provided to the public schools. And if we want our schools to be in place for the next 30 to 40 years, or if we build a new South Lafayette High School, that school might be in place for the next 60 to 75 years. What will the future be for public education in Lafayette? And see, the reality is, it's going to depend on what we think as adults. So I don't come to you presupposing that the board is going to ask for a sales tax to address facilities, or a property tax to address facilities. Nor do I know what, if it's a property tax, how much millage will need to be asked of the voters. See, I don't know the answer to those questions. And really, think about this. The community weighed in 2010. You weighed in on a proposition, and it was resoundingly defeated by the voters. See, we might be headed toward another opportunity to weigh in on facilities. And I want to tell you, I don't know that we can afford to fail again. Because if we don't address some of our needs, then I don't know when will we have the courage to do that again. So a couple of, I don't want to leave you with a gloomy thought about this. Let me just tell you, I've looked at the last proposition, and it was open-ended, and it was probably too much. Too much to ask of voters. I get that. I understand that it was just too much to ask voters to deal with a $1.1 billion price tag of projects. I understand that. So I'm going to do my very best to try to have opportunities to share with people in this city a prioritized list of needs. And I'm going to do my very best to draw lines along that priority list and tell people this is what you can do if you have this much bonding capacity. And ultimately, I think we need to be communicating, and we need to be dialoguing, because we don't get to put on the ballot, you know, an inventory list where you get to pick A, B, C, D, E, or F. I think we're going to have to agree that the community believes that we have to do something. So the last thing I want to leave you with is a couple things that we're thinking about as well. The district is woefully short on technology, and it's starting to impact effectiveness for students. And a study conducted 2 years ago by a committee suggested that the board had been woefully underfunding technology in the system. Now, I don't want to tell you how much that study said we were underfunding, but let me just tell you that I'm asking the board Wednesday night to form a technology steering committee so that we can revisit the technology needs for our students, our teachers, and our classrooms, so that we can wrap into this anticipated maybe bond proposition, we can wrap into that the technology we need to get devices into the hands of every student in the district, to get every classroom appropriately wired with the necessary technology to be effective. And we have a robust Wi-Fi system so that we can have that many computers online at one time, because other districts are spending money on their students putting technology in the hands of those children. So, leave you with a couple of thoughts. I've got only 3 things on my agenda: to help Lafayette Parish become an A-rated school system, to ask the community for guidance on what and how we plan to address facility needs, and thirdly, to deal with technology issues in the district. And if we do those 3 things in short order, and we have conversations, we're going to be left with a school system that will be unable to be surpassed by other districts. Right now, we've got some stellar programs in the district. Kids who go to the early college academy graduate not only with a high school diploma, graduate with an associate degree. Kids who graduate from David Thibodeau STEM Magnet Academy graduate not just with a high school diploma, but graduate with credentials that make them career ready. Kids who graduate from Lafayette High School, there's going to be a press release issued tomorrow about the AP exams for the district. Lafayette High School is going to be singled out as having one of the highest AP passing rates in the state of Louisiana. It's going to be announced tomorrow. But now, thank you. We know we've got some schools that we need to increase academic performance. We're really engaged in helping those communities starting August 13th to really get focused and re-energized. And so I'm excited to be here. I'm happy to address you, and I'm here to make an effort to answer any questions you might have about any of my thoughts.
One time I saw a gym without an air conditioner. One time I saw a gym without an air conditioner.
Okay, so I can't be any clearer than that. She's only one time in her life has she seen a gym without air conditioning. It was probably one of our gyms. Yes.
My old school has a gym with an air conditioner.
Okay.
Good job, guys.
I have a comment, not a question, but I want to say that in my time, since 2007, this is the first time a superintendent has come directly to the public, specifically and only about facilities. And it is unique in the leadership that we have here, and the fact that you asked him to come and speak with about it so that we could hear tonight is amazing. But I worked as part of 2 community organizations that both did studies, starting from 2007 and 2009. And we worked very hard and confirmed, because many people started with, well, our schools don't need that much. And it is horrible. My husband was in videoing and photographing the schools and the needs, and they are much worse. The number of temporary buildings is much higher than it was in 2009. And the children are the ones who are being cheated, and I don't think that we as a district can afford to punish and penalize the kids because we may be upset with board members, or we may be upset with our taxes, or we may be upset with, and we blame, and the blame game is a cycle, and it's been going on. And since 1990, the first long-term plan was done for Lafayette Parish, and it said Lafayette High very likely needed replaced. The second one in 2009 said the same thing. And any school over 65% of replacement rate. We have many schools, but the district is choosing to go with the high schools first because curriculum-wise, that's just a super need. And we can't have our graduates in the scenes I've seen with 6 kids sitting at a table that size, 6 high school sized kids, and asking them to use the computer. That's not respectful of them, and they know they're not respected, and it doesn't create a good learning environment, along with the hot weather and the rain that they get running in and out of the buildings, and the teachers that get wet running in and out of the temporary buildings to their other classes. So I just want to thank him for this leadership. So thank you.
First of all, I probably could not have said it any better, that it really is, it's about the kids. It really is. It's not about us. It's about your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren. Listen, I want to tell you something I didn't plan to add to this, but it puts things in perspective. In 1925, the board passed a property tax that was on the tax rolls until 2008. You paid that tax from 1925 to 2008. You didn't even notice when it fell off of the tax rolls because it wasn't the full amount when it expired in 2008 because the debt had been paid. But through the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, into 2008, this community had a property tax that equaled 16 mills maximum. And it expired in 2008. And it just so turns out, and I'm not suggesting that there's a magic number here, but if we had had that 16 mills of property tax, we wouldn't be talking today about facility needs. Because 16 mills of property tax would provide the district with enough bonding capacity today to address all of our major needs in terms of facilities. Just a piece of information.
Thank you, Doc. We usually, by the way, have our president, I just want to introduce him again. Frank Flynn usually asks the right question. I've been having trouble getting him up here, by the way. Frank, it's your turn.
Thank you for appearing. Appreciate that. As the school year, Here we go. All right. As the school year approaches.
We don't hear you.
Gotta get closer to it.
Closer, okay, let's go here, okay. As the school year opening approaches, do you anticipate a smooth transition into the classrooms for the upcoming fall session? And what potential challenges do you see this fall session?
Okay, so the quick answer is yes. We are going to have an incredibly smooth opening. We issued a press release today to the media indicating that we were launching 2 hotlines for anybody with a problem, concern, piece of advice, criticism, accolades, thank yous. We're going to have the hotline manned to address not only issues with transportation, we also have retired teachers who have volunteered to come in and man our hotline to address any and all problems excluding transportation. So we've got 2 hotlines in place. There was a memo that went out today to the central office staff asking that any call that comes to the Lafayette Parish School System would be answered, and basically the conversation will be something like this. Ma'am, I'm sorry that you are having difficulty. Let me see how I can help you resolve your problem. That same memo is going to go out to schools tomorrow. We're going to try to be customer oriented. We're going to try to help people resolve problems. We're going to try to balance classrooms quickly if we have overcrowding. We're going to try to address transportation issues. And yes, there will probably be some transportation issues. As we balance bus loads, we are going to try to be the kind of school system that when people call us, we try to be responsive. We are going to try to make sure that our schools get off quickly to a fast start, and that we're doing all the right things to help Lafayette really feel good about the public school system.
Thank you. I understand that there are 2 new charter schools in Lafayette Parish. What recommendations would you have to the Board of Secondary and Elementary Education, if any, with reference to the oversight in holding these charter school educators to the same performance standards applicable to our other public school educators?
Okay. So I would say, to be fair, let's level the playing field. Let's make sure charters operate under the same rules and regulations that public schools operate. As an example, we received notice today that the Attorney General just today ruled that teachers and charter administrators need to follow the ethics rules because they are public employees. See, before that Attorney General ruling, they were not subject to ethics rules.
Need or must?
Must. Must. Now let me tell you about charter schools. Listen, the playing field is now such that parents have choice. Parents choose to send their children to public schools, to parochial schools perhaps, to charter schools, even to homeschool children. In fact, you can virtually educate your child today. Parents have choice. Because of that, we now understand we don't have a monopoly on children. So I want you to know that about 2 weeks ago, we launched a flyer in the Morning Advocate on a Sunday and the Daily Advertiser, touting the many programs that are available to our children in the public school system. We encouraged parents to consider sending their children to us, the public school system. On August 16th, we're sending out another flyer, Sunday edition, August 16th, Daily Advertiser or Morning Advocate, Acadiana edition. Look for our flyer. It's going to illustrate our virtual learning program and our Jumpstart programs at the high schools. So I say to all of this, listen, we live and die by the number of students in our chairs. You heard that the board is we've had some financial difficulties with balancing the budget. It stems from the fact that 1,600 students now choose to be educated in charter schools. Every student who leaves the Lafayette Parish School System leaves with the state dollars, which is about $4,000. They also leave with $5,000 of our local tax money. So they get $9,000 for every child leaving the public school system going to a charter school. That's the financial reality of kids moving from public schools to charter schools. That's why we're advertising. That's why we're touting our programs, because every child that comes back to us brings back $4,000 of state money. So we understand the dynamics of that, and we're doing the best we can to be competitive because we understand it's about filling chairs.
Thank you. My final question deals with school construction and new additions.
Just yeah.
Yeah, let me get that. I can't bring that. What'd you do there? Let's try this. How's that? Better? Back in 2010 or 2011, the Lafayette Parish voters were asked to vote on the proposed 25 mil property tax. That would include building 7 new schools, putting new classroom wings on 6 schools, 6 significant renovations and upgrades for every school in Lafayette Parish. Cost of maybe $561 million. Several groups, including your group, were very active in promoting the needs, the real needs of the school system. I remember distinctly Sarah Gilbo Walker, who was chairman of the Community Coalition for Lafayette Schools, came to our meeting, went to the Rotary meetings, went to the Lion Club, went to all the League of Women Voters, went to all the organizations and made the case. They made a tremendous case for the needs of the Lafayette Parish School System, the real need to improve the school system. And I believe the community was receptive and well understands the needs of the community schools. And this is what my question is. What assurances or reassurances can you, as our education superintendent, give our community great-grandparents, the grandparents, the parents, and our soon-to-be parents of public school children, that this current and future school boards will be responsible and accountable in using each and every penny of any and all dedicated public tax monies for the actual timely implementation of expertly constructed new schools and additions? I think that's what needs to be done.
Okay, that's a great question. What I think you're going to see from the board and from my perspective will be a very, very well thoughtfully designed list of priority needs. So, you know, if we were today brainstorming based on what you heard tonight from my presentation, so a couple of takeaways for probably this very top list of projects. I think we have to, if we're going to build a phase 1 South Lafayette High School, I think we need to build that high school, a phase 2. See, the board has about $75 million for phase 1. I told you that that high school built out is going to cost about $120 million. There's going to be a phase 2 for that school. And if we don't build it out, it's not going to have room for 2,000 students. It's going to be built for 1,750 students. It's not going to have 2 gymnasiums, which immediately would be a Title IX violation for equity. It will have, pending the successful low bidder, it's going to have 1 gymnasium. It's not going to have outside athletic facilities. It's not going to have labs for chemistry and physics, classrooms for English 4 and world history. See, we're building it with 2 phases. Phase 1, about $75 million. Phase 2, another $40 million. I think that's going to be near the top of this priority list. We talked about Lafayette High School. We need to do something with Lafayette High School. It is going to be in the top 3 or 4 on that priority list. If it's up there, it's a $120 million price tag. We're going to probably put air conditioning the gyms near the top of that list. Air conditioning all gyms is about $9.5 million of expense. So we're going to have a very, very tight list of projects that the community can be assured that when we start at the top and we work our way down to the last penny that we have available, this board's going to budget only monies for those projects. And listen, by the way, I didn't tell you that we're bringing in law enforcement in the next couple of days. We want to sit with law enforcement. We want the police, law enforcement, school safety professionals to go around and look at all of our facilities. And we want a price tag for what it will take to really secure the front entrance to all of our public buildings. See, Iberia Parish just passed a bond proposition 2 years ago now. They listed front entrance to every school needed to be rehabilitated for safety purposes. You see, I think we need to spend money securing our campuses. Safety has to be addressed. So, I guess my answer to your question is, I think you have to believe, or you have to hope, and you have to expect that there's going to be a list of projects laid out that drive every penny of construction that goes into improving facilities in Lafayette Parish.
Thank you very much.
Next person.
I wanted to add something on that question.
On that question, all right.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Dr. Aguillard, sometimes I think he's a little hamstrung by the fact that he can't do too much without us agreeing to it. So I'm going to go ahead and step in front and answer the question here. In 2010, I believe the vote was 70-30 against that tax, despite the very well-received knowledge of the facility's needs. And so what I took away from that vote was that, as he said earlier, it was too open-ended. There was not enough oversight. It was some school board asking the public to give us $1 billion or $450 million or whatever the incredible number was when you go into a voting booth and say, I'm going to pay $450 million over 20 years. I don't think so. Well, I think, and this is my personal opinion, what I would propose is, let's go have a list. Let's go to a meeting where we say we're going to do A, B, and C, whatever the community agrees on. And then at the end of 4 or 5 years, whatever the time frame is, what you're going to see is a new school here, a new school here, a new wing here. There's going to be tangible proof that your money was spent according to your wishes. And so that's really in a nutshell, what do we get for our money? Because I'm not in favor of, I'm as conservative as they come, right? I'm not in favor of expanding government, proposing new taxes to expand government. But we're not going to conserve our way to a new school. This is spending money, getting something for your money, providing for the children. So that's what I would propose, is that kind of tax package, that kind of time frame. And then, at the end of 5 years, when we complete those projects, we'll probably come back and say, okay, we did 1, 2, and 3. Let's do 4, 5, and 6. And so we end up with the 20 years, the $450 million, but 4 or 5 year increments. The public is able to tell us, you didn't do what you said you were going to do, so we're going to stop this project right here. That's my opinion anyway.
Thank you very much. I'm going to get you in right after this. You don't need to comment because you totally agree. Or did you want?
No, I'd like to comment.
Yeah, you would. Go ahead.
And listen, I don't apologize. I have a sense of urgency. And listen, take away from this, I really care about the Lafayette Parish schools. I really get that we haven't addressed all of the needs. So you're going to hear me talk repeatedly about we can't wait any longer to begin this journey. I'm not opposed to demonstrating to the public that we can act responsibly. I think that would be a refreshing turn of events that we do exactly what we ask of the voters. So, but you're going to hear me talk about the kids can't wait any longer. Those temporary buildings are just getting older. It is true that some of that $9,000 that gets sent to the charter operator, a significant amount of that money leaves the state of Louisiana. Now, something you may or may not know, the young lady talked about renting facilities. Those public dollars that get used by charter operators to build buildings, schools, those buildings belong to the charter operator, not to you, the public. I don't know that you knew that. I understand that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A round of applause. Thank you very much, Dr. Aguillard. We appreciate when you're back again. But I want to thank everyone for coming this evening. Hopefully they picked up some good information and that we can go forward with education in this community. I think it is very important. Thank you all again.